This is Eyes and Ears Wide Open with Dan McGrath on WSMN 1590 Nashua Source for News and Talk Radio. Before the break, we were talking about elections, property taxes, where we're headed. Once again, tying all back to healthcare costs. On the line with me, we have Scott.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
And Scott, if you can give me a little bit of your background.
Sure. I'm a certified financial planner, and I work for a company called USAA down here in San Antonio, Texas.
All right, and you're coming on the show because you wanted to talk a little bit about your expertise is life insurance.
Well, yeah. So you know, as a certified financial planner, you pretty much cover the full gamut of personal finance topics.
Well, I will argue against that, but we'll get there in a second.
Fair enough. But it's Life Insurance Awareness Month.
Okay.
So you know, we're out there trying to make sure that folks understand the importance of life insurance. Basically, a simple message, and that is, you know, take a look at your situation, make sure that you've got the right amounts of coverage, so that if the unthinkable happens, you don't leave your family in a bad spot.
Okay. Besides that, I look at the adage of trying to make sure we don't leave our family in a bad spot. I get that. I understand that. Now, for the listeners out there, can you explain a little bit deeper on what you mean by that?
Well, yeah. So, you know, when you look at you know, what happens if somebody passes away, you know, that's where life insurance can often come in. I mean, we'd all, first of all, I think, love to have enough resources available that we wouldn't have to buy life insurance. You know, if we had enough assets that, you know, we could pay off, you know, that our family would be okay if we passed away and all of our debts and bills would be paid, that would be great. For the vast majority of the country, though, that's probably not a realistic situation. So then you have to look at, you know, if you were to pass away, what happens to your family? What happens to those who depend on you financially? And if you've got enough assets to take care of them, fantastic. If not, that's where life insurance can fill that gap and say, okay, well, you know, it's in my personal situation. You know, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. If I pass away, I've got 2 kids that are in middle school. She's got to be able to take care of those kids. You know, my boys, she's got to be able to, you know, provide them with a lifestyle. And so there's life insurance available to make sure that if something happens to me, they can go to college, they can still live the way they want, that type of thing. So it's, you know, you really need to think about if you pass away, what's going to happen to those you leave behind, and is there a financial obligation that you feel to them that you'd like to take care of, and is life insurance the way to do that? Now,
I don't know if you've taken a listen to the beginning of our show or what I do.
Sure, I did, yep.
Okay, so the background is Jester Financial Technologies. We are the only firm in the country that's providing information, data, the ability to run reports to show people what their health care costs are. And my axe to grind with the financial industry, especially with the CFP, and I actually tell people, and I stand in audiences, I'm a national speaker, and I say, when you hear CFP, just remember the C in CFP means can't. And then it's financial planning. And
all right.
It is a little, I have some animosity towards the financial industry because in my world, the financial industry is doing everything it can, and I'm not taking it out on you.
No, I understand.
The financial industry is doing everything they can to actually hurt people. Now, the stories that you see of, like, if you watch the latest Wolf on Wall Street, and you see the show, right, you should see the exchange between Matthew McConaughey and Leonardo DiCaprio. What's your job? And Leonardo DiCaprio says, well, to make my clients money. And Matthew McConaughey laughs and says, no. It's about taking as much money out of their pocket and putting it into yours. And they start laughing. And I show that when I do a presentation to the general public here. This is the truth. They're not hiding the fact. There isn't a financial company out there. And I'm sorry, I've been talking to USAA for years. And USAA refuses to acknowledge this. I'm going to ask one question. What is the only mandatory expense people have in retirement? You don't have to answer it. I don't want to set you up. There's a mandatory expense everyone has.
I think I know your answer to that based on what you do.
Yeah. Okay. All right, then. So now the reason why I was excited to talk to you is that you speak about life insurance. And
right,
life insurance in my world is arguably the greatest thing people can own. It's the greatest thing ever. And it's life insurance. Go ahead.
So we've got a common belief in life insurance. That's good.
Yes. My issue is when you look at a life insurance salesman, you see everyone thinks of Ned Ryerson from Groundhog Day. Not sure if you've ever seen that movie.
Yep.
Because they're not showing people why they need life insurance. To protect somebody from their family, that's one thing. I get that. If God forbid there's a loss. But the beauty of life insurance is, can you describe, if I was to own life insurance or, say, an indexed universal life policy, do I build cash value?
Yeah, I mean, so that's the idea behind those universal life policies with the various flavors of them, right? You're trying to accumulate a cash value inside the policy that can be used for any number of purposes.
Okay, so now how is that taxed?
It's not taxed as the money is growing inside the policy. And if you structure withdrawals properly, you can take money out of those policies without paying any income taxes on it.
And for the average person, how hard is it to structure it properly so they could take money out?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it sounds easier for some folks personally than what it really is. I mean, it depends on the financial acumen of the individual who buys the policy. But the theory behind it, the strategy behind it is you take out the money that you put in first. You don't have to pay any taxes on that because it was contribution. And then you can take loans against the rest of it is one of the strategies you can do so that those loans are not taxable.
Perfect.
And so that's the strategy. I've been there, done that, seen that, used that. So it's a way to accumulate funds for later on.
Fantastic. And that's where we're trying to go, and that's the beauty of life insurance. Now, where the grind happens is, we know, as we stated, I said, what is the one mandatory cost that everyone has in retirement? And I'll lead you to it. And your answer was?
I'm going to guess you're going to say health insurance.
Believe it or not, you have to have it.
Or health costs. Yeah.
You have to have health. Now, here's the beauty. Since 1993, in order for anybody to even collect Social Security, they had to accept Medicare when eligible. If they did not, they forfeited all current, future, and past benefits. So let's say somebody that was 62 years old decides to enroll in Social Security at the age of 65. They're no longer eligible, or they're no longer covered under eligible health or credible health insurance, either through an employer or spouse's employer, and they still choose not to accept Medicare. By law, the IRS recovers or recoups every penny given to them in Social Security. If they can't pay it back, the IRS goes after the children and takes the money from the children. Since 1993, in order to collect Social Security, you have to have health care costs. On top of that, in 2010, the President of the United States passed the Affordable Care Act that states everyone has to have health care costs.
Yep.
Does the CFP, the Can't Financial Plan, does it address this in any way whatsoever?
So I think I understand where you're coming from with the industry. I mean, it's a broad industry, and there are a lot of people. The personal finance industry in general, it could take on many different angles. The reality is, I think when you look at certified financial planners, the whole idea behind the CFP designation is that you are taking a broader approach to personal finance. I think that with any large group of people, you're going to have people that do the right thing for folks, and I think you're going to have people who don't do as well as they could. But the general point behind CFP is that we're different. You're trying to bring a group of people together that believe that you put the best interest of the client first. There's an ethics requirement around the whole thing. So it's not, to your Wolf of Wall Street example, it's not, the dirtbags that are trying to take advantage of people. You're literally trying to do good, solid work to help people make good financial.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and I'm not stating that in any way whatsoever, because there are people in my community that are CFPs, and I believe they're trying to do the right thing. But I've also been taught that the path of good intentions leads to hell. So now when we take a look at what the CFP is teaching, and we take a look at what the financial industry is taking, and why I find Life Insurance Awareness Month to be sort of ironic, when you take a look at the healthcare costs, we've known since 2003 that your mandatory expense that you have to have per order of the federal government is predicated on what? How do we determine the cost of someone's health in retirement? We do it by the amount of income they're earning. So we're telling people as financial professionals to place money into their employer's 401k on the traditional side, also invest money into a traditional IRA, also invest money into the stock market. When they turn 65, 70, 75, and they decide to retire, and now they turn 70 and they have that required minimum distribution, what do they have to do?
Yeah, you got to take the money out.
So
you got to pay taxes on it.
Not only do you have to pay taxes on it, but it counts as income towards their health costs. So now their
unless
health.
They're using Roth.
Thank you. Unless they're using Roths, or what other product?
You could use life insurance for it as well. Yeah.
Thank you. That's why I was excited to talk to you. Is ultimately life insurance becomes the savior. So now, let's say we decided to use a Roth. Roths right now are currently not being counted by the definition of Social Security and Medicare as income, to show people where Roths can go. And I'm a big proponent of Roth. The definition of income per order of Social Security is everything on lines 37 and 8B of the IRS Form 1040. So now what sits on line 8A is the Roth distribution. It just doesn't carry over to 8B. Now, I'm not an accountant. I don't try to fake it as one. I just know a little bit about it. So what ends up happening, it is on your tax return. So now the other part of the definition of income in the eyes of Social Security and Medicare, it's your adjusted gross income plus any tax-exempt interest. To lump Roths into it isn't going to be that difficult to count towards Medicare costs. And what is the biggest problem that the federal government is telling people? What's the biggest cost people are going to have in retirement? It's their health care.
Health costs, right?
We know it's health. Everyone's talking it's health costs, it's health costs, it's health costs. And then here's the federal government has given us rules. You have to have it. It's mandatory. It's predicated on the amount of income you're going to use. By the way, everything besides life insurance, Roth IRAs, the 401h, which nobody is talking about, and reverse mortgages count towards it.
Yeah. The challenge with that, I think, is going to be what happens to the tax code in the future. To your point, they could lump the Roth and they could change these rules at any point in time.
But right now,
that's the real risk, right?
Well, now, why life insurance is fantastic, what I explain to people, if we take a look at our tax code is 101 years old, our income tax. In 1913, we decided to implement it as a tax. We know that the original tax code was, I believe, 194 characters. It was 1% in the first $20,000 after, I believe, $5,000. And then it went up 1% incrementally until you were paying 7% on $500,000. Once again, I think it was about 190 characters in our tax code. Has our tax code changed at all in the last 101 years?
Slightly.
Okay. Can you now name me the one financial product that has never changed?
I'm going to guess you're going to say life insurance.
Amazingly, in listeners, not only is life insurance not changed, it's still grows tax deferred. You can still take money out tax free. It's also the product that's owned by the wealthiest people in the country. Who owns Geico? Who owns Progressive? Who owns the insurance companies? That's Warren Buffett and George Soros. And what are the likes of Susie Orman? What are the likes of Dave Ramsey? What are the likes of Ken Fisher? I'm sorry, they're CFPs. What do they tell you not to buy?
They're actually not CFPs.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to lead you down there. Thank you.
But hey, I'm with you. To me, I think my whole thing is when it comes to insurance, I think so many people think it's too expensive. So many people think it doesn't work. I know that you're a proponent of having the money in the cash value type policies, permanent policies. To me, I look at it and say, you know what? I think that the big issue here is people think it's too expensive. They don't buy insurance at all. And you have so many people that don't have any coverage in place. That really, I think you need to step back and say, okay, how does it work? What's available? Is the right answer what you're talking about with the universal life insurance? Is the right answer for somebody, who doesn't have a lot of cash and they're 24 years old? Do they buy term insurance? To me, I don't really care what they buy. I just want them to have some type of protection in place to make sure that the family's okay. If something should happen to them, or for those who depend on them financially, that something's okay.
All right, I am getting a message that you are being called somewhere else. I will still argue.
I'm getting the hook.
Getting the hook, not by us, by your end. I will argue the point, just so you know, every single person, even that 24-year-old, you can choose to say it's too costly to buy life insurance, and the life insurance industry is doing a great job at not selling itself. Think of the amount of what your health care costs are going to be. I challenge you to go to my site, yourretirementcost.org, www.yourretirementcost.org. And then I also want you to factor in long-term care, because you can put a rider of LTC on life insurance. It is the greatest product that's out there to help people plan for retirement. I know you got to go. I'm sorry, Scott. Time to give yourself a plug. Please feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for USAA here in San Antonio, Texas. If there's additional information people want to find out about us or about life insurance that we have available, we've got a section of our website. It's just USAA.com, 2 A's, and you can type life insurance in the search box and find a whole load of information about the different types of policies and approaches that are out there, some of which are about what we talked about here today.
And how do we get in touch with you, Scott?
Best way to do that is I've got a section of our website. It's called Ask USAA. People can ask personal finance questions on the site. In full disclosure, we don't answer them all on the site because it's too many. But it's just USAA.com/Ask USAA.
All right. You know I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to send it because, as I said, I've been talking to USAA for years now, seeing if they'll ever address people's mandatory cost. And being military folk, they're now, TRICARE is now forcing them into Part B. So they have this cost. They are subject to the means testing. So I am going to ask that of USAA to see if they can do something. It's a fine organization doing wonderful things for people. So I want to thank you for your time. I know you're getting the hook.
Thank you.
And I look forward to talking to you some other time, Scott.
Okay. Take care, Dan.
You too. Thank you.